Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your hosts, TV, aka TV on basketball, alongside my co-host Jay, aka the Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy? Welcome to the playoffs.
Brody, it feels like this countdown has been so long, and now we finally get to talk about real NBA playoff basketball. 82 games can be a stressor, man. It could be a long journey. The play-in tournament added a little bit of sauce. We got to talk about that and have some fun. Now, TV. Now we're really locked in. Now we're in that time frame where we're playing some competitive basketball. We got some good games through the first one or two games for each of these matchups. Some not as fun as others, but for the most part, I will say that I feel like we've had a pretty entertaining opening to the NBA playoffs. How do you feel?
I've been having a blast. I think there's been some close games, which you want to see in the playoffs, but then you also have you got a good mix with the blowouts. You're not going to get a freaking banger every single game as much as we want to. So I think we've had a good mix so far, a lot of talking points, and we're going to get through a lot of them today. Jay, early reactions for each of these series. We're going to go through it. Like we mentioned before the show, some series deserve more time than others because, we've got some doozies to go through as well. So yeah, we're going to be giving us our early playoff reactions, kind of go through it and see what changes need to be made. And yeah, we're going to just talk to playoff basketball and kind of shoot the shit. And it's going to be a good time today, guys. Should be a good episode, so make sure you sit back, relax, and enjoy. But before we get into that, we do have to plug our other socials. Make sure you follow our individual socials at TV on Basketball, at The Routine Jumper. Those ones can be found in the description down below. In terms of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, make sure you follow us on TikTok for the best NBA content. You got the playoff recaps, the news, the different series, the clips, all that stuff. So make sure you check us out over there. If you're on YouTube, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. And if you're listening to us on any of the podcast networks, Spotify or Apple, leave a review, subscribe, all that good stuff. We appreciate all of y'all's support. Jay, are you ready to deep dive into some playoff hoops?
Bro, I am excited, bro. This is my favorite. I mean, this and whenever we start talking about the early stages of free agency are probably my two most favorite times here on the podcast, bro. So I'm excited for this stretch.
100%. And we are going to start off with some of the games that had two games already so far. We've had a couple of two-game series come and go. So we're going to start off with probably the most talked about series of the playoffs so far. The Denver Nuggets taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves, in which the Denver Nuggets got off to a slow start game one, came back and really performed there in the second half, and then it was kind of the flip over there in game two, Jay, where the Denver Nuggets, man, that first quarter, if y'all were watching that first quarter of Nuggets Timberwolves, boy, 4-and-1 threes. I've never seen that in my entire life. And then but the Timberwolves were able to clamp up, take over that game, and they're able to steal one on the road. So 1-1 series. We knew going into the playoffs this was going to be one of the most interesting ones. Jay, what have you been noticing in this 3-6 matchup?
I think the biggest thing, right, is that if we're focusing on the Minnesota Timberwolves who are coming off this victory, the main thing that I learned from game two is that they are more than okay with the idea of watching Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray get the shots up. They are more than okay with understanding that two-man game is just going to do what they're going to do. And even in this game, very inefficient across the board. I mean, let's look at it. Combined 19 of 45 between the two of them. You'll live with that. You will live with it. Granted, it's sub 50%, which is obviously net positive, but we also know there's margin for error for that one, where on a different night for the Denver Nuggets, that could be, around 60-65%. But nonetheless, you live with it. And the reason why is because it felt like, TV, everything for everyone else just felt so difficult to get into. Like, Cam Johnson, to me, just seemed like he could not really get in rhythm from beyond the arc. I think the fact that Tim Hardaway Jr. was able to knock down a couple of threes kind of kept him alive. But this team has never really been a prolific three-point shooting team, not even just before this season, prior to this year. The last 2-3 seasons now, the three ball has always been a big question mark for him. I think that's why Tim Hardaway was such a revelation for them this season and why they probably wanted more out of Cam Johnson this year. So you live and die with the fact that, Jokic is going to get his near triple-double. Did it again, by the way, of being right there in the ballpark with it. Jamal Murray, again, right there with, high 25, 30 ball, being able to put the ball in the basket, getting to his mid-range spots. You expect it. But I think the biggest thing for the T-Wolves, right, And this is the main thing I think is going to just be more important. If the Timberwolves want to get past the Nuggets, it's going to come down to the collective effort of being able to get to to be able to get buckets from guys that are not named Anthony Edwards. Now, the guy that we normally like to point to and make jokes about showed up in game 2. Showed up in
Especially
real
the start of that game. Especially the start of that game. He was freaking cooking them.
Yeah, Julius Randle is somebody that we like to give a lot of crap to here on this podcast, but when he plays well, we also love to give him his flowers when he does so. And this was one of those games I was very proud of how aggressive he was, and I'm glad that you mentioned the beginning portion of the game. Very active and early. I think he had about 3 or 4 of the first 10 shots for Minnesota to kick things off. Did not waste any time trying to get that action in early. And I think that's going to be really important because, TV, we came into the series. I think me and you even had this conversation on pod of like, if same thing with Cade Cunningham for the Detroit Pistons. Like, if you don't got a second guy that can shot create around your lead dude, it's going to be a long series for some of these teams that are going to be in here where they don't have really any offensive firepower outside of their lead guy. Because as these series continue, you shut off the water on the main guy, things just start getting real murky. Right? We saw that with Devin Booker in the Phoenix Suns game. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. This was one of those games that, like Julius Randle, he had to turn back the clock to the All-NBA version of himself. How often can they get that? We know is always the big question.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think the real focus here and the way that, like you mentioned, how the Timberwolves are going to get these wins is looking at the guys outside of Anthony Edwards. Because clearly going into the series, and you've seen it in these first 2 games, bro is still feeling the injury that he suffered like before the playoffs. He's playing at 90%. You could see him even at the start of game just holding on to that knee. Like you could tell he's feeling it. Luckily, he had freaking 30 points in the last game, absolutely cooking them in the second half. Shout out to Ed. But the other guys need to step up. And you mentioned Julius Randle. One of the biggest things for me going into the series is, okay, if Aaron Gordon's guarding you, I'm cool with if you're not winning that matchup. Aaron Gordon's freaking good, especially when you like see who playoff Aaron Gordon is. Fair enough. But whoever else is on Julius Randle, you gotta win that matchup. Whether it's Spencer Jones, Cam Johnson, freaking Jokic. You're freaking faster than Jokic. Any one of those guys that's not named Aaron Gordon, Julius Randle knows to cook. And to be fair, the 24-point performance, again, most of that coming in the first half, he did his job. The other guy I want to shout out too, Dante DiVincenzo, bro. When he plays, it always feels like a net positive. Yeah. When you look at the plus minus from everyone on this team, the highest was 6. The second highest was 6. Dante DiVincenzo's was at 20. When a plus minus of 20. Whenever he was on the court, he always felt like he was hitting a timely 3. His spacing is super important. And even though we kind of knew him best, especially on the New York Knicks days, as kind of being that off-ball 2 guard, the Timberwolves have been needing a point guard for so long. They've been using Dante as kind of a pseudo point guard all these years, and he's improved as a playmaker, improved as a ball handler during that time. So he's definitely stepping up as well. So yeah, shout out to the other Timberwolves for really stepping up, and also just shout out to their defense. At this point, they're like, okay, double teaming either Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic is just going to cause more trouble and get the others involved. Play him straight up at this point, and just see kind of like trust your defense that way. Rudy Gobert, and I found this really interesting that he mentioned this before the game. They asked him, how do you feel about not being on a D-point ballot? I was stubbed, but it's not the first time I've been stubbed. It's not going to be the last time I've been stubbed. I've been stubbed my whole career. Bro comes in and forces Jokic into his final 7 shots, 1 for 7. He helps stifle Nikola Jokic in that second half, just being there, being, a tall figure, and just making Jokic take as difficult shot as possible. And the thing is, he didn't have a single block in this game, but you could tell the defensive effort was there. So around Anthony Edwards, yes, you're going to get enough from him. 10 for 25. You kind of have to live with that with Ant because he's going to be able to get all those shots off. But as long as the other guys are doing their thing, Bones Highland had 13 points in 9 minutes. Nas Reed had 11 points off the bench. If the other guys can step up and they can hold the Nuggets down like they did in that second half, this is going to be a very close series.
Yeah, and I think there's 2 things that you talked about that I want to point out really quickly on the Timberwolves side that I think like almost need just another bit of oomph, right? Is you talked about Anthony Edwards favoring that injury. I think that's going to be an important factor when you talk about how long this series can go. We know that this has the capability to go 7. We even had the conversation about it when we did our predictions that we thought there was a real chance this could be a 6 or a 7-game series. That's going to be something I watch because if you notice too, look at the shot distribution. 11 threes in this game out of the 25 shots he took. There's a lot of settling there. I'm a little worried about it. Once upon a time, we talked about this last season. There was a question about, is Ant, because Ant, led the league in three-point
Yeah,
attempts last year and
yeah.
was one of the better three-point shooters in the league. And the question, I think they even asked him at one point, like, are you settling, or is this something that you're trying to add to your game? Of course he goes the high road route of like, yeah, I'm trying to expand my game X, Y, and Z. But there's series like this one where Nikola Jokic as the rim protector is somebody as Anthony Edwards you would love to have test constantly and as consistently as humanly possible. And I just feel like he didn't do that much of that in game two. I think, again, that goes back to shouting out Julius Randle. Number two, though, and more importantly, is the Rudy Gobert element that you mentioned. TV, this is just a better version of him as far as what he does impactfully to make sure that his presence is felt on the floor. TV, we're not going to see an offensive performance from Rudy Gobert like what we saw in game one again for the rest of the series. I'm calling it in advance. You got an aberration of a 17-10 game from Rudy Gobert in game one. Maybe he gets it again, but quite frankly, Rudy Gobert has not scored 17 points or more since March 20th, almost a month ago. So the idea that he's gonna walk around and just be kind of putting up these double digit what's it called performances, prepared with like having a double double, I just don't see it. I don't see it. But what he was able to do in his time on the floor is the thing that makes the most out of what he does best, which is as a rim protector, as a one-on-one isolation defender in the post. And again, this is a guy that I think the Minnesota Timberwolves, you have to be able to trust him. You have to be able to trust him on the island with Nikola Jokic. I think you made a great point when you were like, the biggest adjustment from game one to game two is we can't keep shading towards Jamal. We can't keep shading towards Nikola Jokic. We got to play him straight up and trust that we can hold feet, because those other three guys, you can live with them being stuck in situations, because the two in Nikola Jokic and Murray, we already know what their productive value is going to be. So you have to just be able to play them straight up, because if you give those other three players of any kind, especially Aaron Gordon, who we know is capable of having himself a game in one of these series, you give them any kind of life, you might have just gave them all the runway they needed. So to be able to play the ability to play Nikola Jokic straight up as Rudy Gobert may be the most important unlockable of this series, and thankfully they figured it out early on.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, will Jokic struggle like that in future games? You can't expect that. I mean, at the end of the day, you can't expect him to go 1 for 7 in the final. You can't expect, firstly, Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic combined to go 2 for 22 in the fourth quarter. That was a rough showing.
Yeah.
But you just kind of have to live again. You got to end up living with the results. People like to point at those crazy shots in Nikola Jokic hits in the playoffs and all that. Sometimes you just got to live with it. Right. There's some things you can't do. And I know this from watching the freaking Cavs Raptors series and seeing Donovan Mitchell and James Harden just completely play with the Raptors and hit some of the most ridiculous shots I've ever seen. Sometimes you just gotta play them straight up and be like, whatever happens, happens. And luckily for the Timberwolves, it really worked out in that game.
Yeah.
But Jay, I know we're gonna talk about later about what's worrying us the most in these playoffs. That fourth quarter offense, man, of the Denver Nuggets was not looking great. I feel like there was not much fluidity like there has been in previous years. I feel like there's a lot more, it's a me sort of situation, not even that much of the two-man game. Yeah. Like, does that worry you a little bit? Because I feel like even though they did have the number one offense this year, if they're not going to be that number one offense, their defense is just not going to catch up. And I feel like that's what kind of happened in this game, where it's like, yes, you went up to a 19-point lead early, and that's kind of like what your peak offense looks like. When it starts slowing down, the other team always has a chance to come back, because this defense is not playoff level. Yeah. Freaking bottom 10 in the league in defensive rating. So if this doesn't compensate for this is where you find trouble with the Denver Nuggets.
I think that the worrisome aspect of it is if the Wolves start getting shots knocked down from some of these other guys. You mentioned Dante DiVincenzo earlier. Obviously, we talked about Julius Randle. I think if you're going to get that kind of contribution from the others outside of Ant consistently, I mean, Lord only knows. If Naz Reid gets hot in one of these games, it's going to get spooky. At that point, it's going to become worrisome.
He's done it to the Nuggets before.
Exactly. I think this is one of those where the scary part about it, if you're a Nuggets fan, is if the Timberwolves throughout this series start to get a better understanding or a better grip on the bearings as far as their offensive structure is considered, they already have the defense to keep up with you, as you mentioned beforehand, come fourth quarter time. The question for me is whether or not Minnesota can then still trade blow for blow offensively, even when things slow down in the fourth quarter for the Nuggets. Because you got to be able to respond. Just because you can get the stops doesn't mean much if offensively you might not be having as much trouble to get to your actions against the Denver Nuggets defense. But if you're still having a hard time getting the ball in the basket, you having an elite level defense doesn't mean anything, because you're going to have to be able to go blow for blow. Because once we start to get down to that last 2-3 minutes, if this game is within reach, I love Ant, and he is a guy that in the clutch fourth quarter I trust. But I trust Jokic more, and damn it, I might trust Jamal Murray more than both of them. Scary enough.
Oh no, you're 100% right. It's not just the Nuggets have to freaking have to step up defensively and have to catch up that way. Can the Timberwolves offense do this again? Because we've seen like what happens like when they like get a little bit cold, because they're the ones who got off to the hot start in game one, and then they're the ones who had to slow down near the end there, and that's how the Nuggets were able to catch up. So we've seen the Timberwolves going low. So if the other guys do end up stepping up, that would be massive. They're going to need to do it, though, because Anthony Edwards, like I mentioned, he's clearly not 100%. And you're not going to get the Superman Ant that we've seen in years past. So the other guys, we already mentioned Dante. We mentioned Julius Randle. I'm looking at you, Io, who's looking pretty damn good to start the series as well. Looking at you, Bones Island, like for your minutes to come in. You're out there to be bucket getters. You need to be able to get buckets in the absence of Ant. So good. It's very nice that you can kind of look at both sides of it for after 2 games. Should be a fun series. Jade, is this going to change your prediction either way? I still have Nuggets. I think we both had Nuggets in 6 going into the series. Do you feel so confident in that pick?
I think I'm still right there with it. Again, game 2 told me that clearly Julius can, tap into that bucket if he needs to. And I think this is going to be one of those series where like they're really going to need him to be able to come along the way. I mean, for them to be able to compete to get back to the Western Conference Finals, they're going to need Julius Randle, right? But I think particularly against this team, this is one of those matchups where, like, we've seen it in the past. I mean, what is this, a trilogy now at this point with this kind of series?
Yes.
We understand that the big man effectiveness, remember, once upon a time, it was the trio of Rudy Gobert, Naz Reid, and Karl-Anthony Towns. Essentially, Julius Randle was having to take on more of that Karl-Anthony Towns role as far as not just offensively, but defensively against this Denver Nuggets team. Julius showed his capabilities in stretches in game 2. I got to see it a little bit more. Before I kind of fully lean into the idea of the Minnesota Timberwolves flipping the script. But, I mean, we picked it in 6 for a reason,
Yeah,
6 for a reason.
Definitely going to be one of those matchups to watch. I cannot wait to watch game 3. Who's going to be able to take the advantage after that? The other game, though, that's a 1-1 series. And, bro, this was a crazy ending. The Knicks versus the Hawks.
Yeah.
Man, I can't help but feel that New York kind of sold a little bit in that fourth quarter.
Kinda? I mean...
Yeah, we're going to talk about Mike Brown a little bit. But, yeah, the Knicks, game 1, they won comfortably. The Hawks, we knew that they were gonna be at a height disadvantage, so they went with a lot of switching defense in game 1. But to be honest, got absolutely cooked there, especially in the second half. Game 2, though, shout out to them creating picking up the scraps from other teams. Jonathan Kuminga and CJ McCollum went off. Both those dudes played huge roles in the comeback win for the Atlanta Hawks. And they were able to take the Knicks down. People calling CJ McCollum the villain of New York. And CJ's like, whoa, we don't have to go all the way there.
Yeah, I'm a good guy, he says.
I'm a good guy. Got 2 kids in the wife. We got himself defending himself in MSG. Like, you don't need to call me that. But the Hawks, we knew they were going to be competitive. We knew they were going to be scrappy. And they were able to take game 2, take it back to the crib. 1-1 series. Jay, how are you feeling about the series so far?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, right, and for me, I didn't want to get too overzealous about game 1. And I think I tried to temper my expectations. If you guys watched the video that I posted on TikTok for this on the Hit Your Free Throws page, my biggest thing was that I thought they were going to need more help from their guard play. It was the very first thing I said was like, yo, Nah and CJ cannot play like how they played in game 1. And don't get me wrong, Nickeil Alexander-Walker still trying to find his footing in this series. 3 of
Yeah.
12 in the last game, not really great. CJ, on the other hand, clearly understood the assignment bouncing back from game one. And don't get me wrong, game one against New York wasn't necessarily bad for him, but the perimeter shot creation is just going to be so important against this team because the truth of the matter is, Atlanta's not necessarily going to beat New York from a physicality standpoint. I think we all kind of understood that going into the series. I think the most important thing and the most impactful thing about Atlanta in this series was just how freakishly athletic this team is across the board outside of CJ. Like, this team has athletes everywhere. And so when you talk
Yeah.
about the idea of how they can create mismatch advantages, you think about the idea of them being able to do what? Hustle on the glass, operate in second chance points, being able to get opportunities out of that, and most importantly, what they do in the open floor. This was one of those games where points in the paint won the battle 58-54. They did not necessarily win the offensive rebounding battle. That's something that does worry me. That's something that we'll talk about a little bit later on. They did not win the offensive rebounding battle, did not win the rebounding battle at all. That part concerns me. 18 points off of turnovers, 20 points in fast break points. That's Atlanta Hawks basketball at its finest as far as being able to take on a team like the New York Knicks. And like you talk about the way they sold towards the back half of the fourth quarter, do you remember how many easy buckets it felt like they got towards the beginning of that quarter? Because it was one of those where it felt like this game was starting to tell the story
Yeah.
early on in the fourth quarter of like, oh man, wait a minute. What's going on with New York, bro? The defense isn't happening. Cat looks like he looks like he's stuck in cement. All of a sudden they get, oh man, what's happening? You know what I mean? And it
Yeah.
started to become a real struggle. I think the scariest thing for the New York Knicks, the scariest thing is there is a threefold. You let Jonathan Kuminga get himself a comfort game, which I was worried about him after game one. You let Jonathan Kuminga get a comfort game. Noah has not played well through 2 games. For statistics purposes, Nickeil Alexander-Walker in the last 2 games has shot a combined 9 of 29. 9 of 29 over 2 games.
Yeah.
And then Jalen Johnson as well. Another player who I genuinely can say still hasn't even really tapped into all NBA. Like, this is going to be a guy that ends up being like third team all NBA this year, maybe second team. I don't think he's had that kind of Jalen Johnson all NBA performance yet through 2 games. Do you? So, like,
No.
that's the scary part to me, bro. Is I'm not going to say I feel like the Knicks have already given. I don't think the Knicks have given Atlanta their best, but I think Atlanta has a couple more layers to them that they still have to peel back.
No, I think, no, that's definitely good, something to look at because, again, I mean, I said off the top, TJ McCollum and Jonathan Kuminga like winning a game for you guys is massive because your main guys that you've been relying on for most of this year, you mentioned Jalen, Nickel, even the Congo to a certain extent has, like, I mean, he's like their only big, but they just not getting enough from those guys. But it's the freaking pickups they picked up at the trade deadline and CJ McCollum and Jonathan Kuminga that really picked them up in this game. Shout out to Kuminga too. Defensively, the man brought the energy
Yes.
on that end as well. So shout out to
Yes.
Jonathan Kuminga. Definitely had a really up and down tenure with the Atlanta Hawks so far. But when you get a good Jonathan Kuminga game, you could see the potential and you could see why they are giving Zachary, we should say, game coach decision, see it, what's it called, DNP CDs, that's what they're calling them. Yeah, so yeah, Jonathan Kuminga is definitely giving them more than that.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things I have to like think about in this of the series, and this is where I mentioned a while ago, I want to look at you, Mike Brown. Clearly in these 2 games, if you're not Karl-Anthony Towns, you're not Jalen Brunson, the Knicks don't have enough offense to match up with this Hawks team. They don't. These 2 guys are elite, all NBA level offensive players. And you need to have, and what I've seen from these 2 games, these 2 need to be on the court no matter what. I'm not saying it has to be together, but you're going to need to stagger them at some point where one of Karl-Anthony Towns and or Jalen Brunson have to be on the court at the same time. Mike Brown went 12 minutes yesterday with neither of them on the court. Almost 12 whole minutes. And the New York Knicks offense in that time really freaking struggled. And that's something where I look at Mike Brown as a coach and say, look, you've seen what this team is. These guys feed off of Jalen Brunson. They feed off of what Karl-Anthony Towns, these 2 guys can be as shot creators. on the inside and out.
Mm.
When you have none of those guys in the court, you don't have anyone else that can be those sort of deterrents. They're the guys that can like draw the extra energy to give open shots to an OG, to a Mikal Bridges, to all those guys. So at the end of the day, I'm looking at coaching. I'm also looking at the fact that this Knicks team so far has shown me they don't have enough offense outside of Jalen Brunson and or Cat to be able to get this done. The Hawks, yes, they still have layers to their offense. I still worry for the rebounding. I mean, freaking last game they got almost out rebounded by freaking 20, but they have guys that still haven't been able have basically been untapped yet, which should be scary for the New York Knicks. The Knicks need to have these guys on the court because once these guys are going, and you could see it, and again in different parts of the series, when these guys are cooking, it's going to open up the game for other people. So I'm looking at that for the Knicks going forward. And even though I still have them like winning the series, this Hawks team, we said since the beginning, they're gonna give trouble to these Knicks. And in Game 2 and MSG was just one of those examples.
Yeah, I think just to build off of what you said beforehand, I think it's dangerous that you're in a situation where you're almost in a lose-lose, right? Because one of the biggest things that happened with CJ McCollum is the ability to hunt out Jalen Brunson, and how frequently we saw it throughout that game does make it a danger from a defensive standpoint. As important as Jalen Brunson is offensively, defensively, we saw with somebody
CJ was cooking him.
I mean, CJ, I saw a quote from Colin Cowherd earlier that said that Jalen Brunson has CJ McCollum looking like modern day Michael Jordan. Like, and although that's hyperbolic, it goes to show you how effective the action of hunting Jalen Brunson, hunting Karl Anthony Towns, quite frankly, in this game as well, was from a defensive standpoint. TV, I'll tell you something else that I think is really scary though about the Jalen Brunson minutes. And more particularly, we come from the side you're coming from, which is like, you got to be careful about how long you sit him. TV, is there a little bit of PTSD from the last few years of trying not to do the Tom Thibodeau and find yourself overplaying someone like a Jalen Brunson? Because if you notice, let's go all the way back to the very beginning of the year. One of the biggest things that a lot of emphasis was put on early on in the season, we even talked about it. There was two things that we talked about was going to be the biggest difference between Mike Brown and Tom Thibodeau. Number one was we thought there would be more emphasis on ball movement in offensive actions. And we saw it early and often. We actually commented on it a few times early on in the season on the podcast. Number two was the control of the minutes. And Jalen Brunson, I would say in comparison to years past at least, Jalen Brunson was very protected in comparison to his time frame with Tom Thibodeau. Does that feel fair to say?
Fair.
I wonder if that becomes an Achilles heel. Because although Tom Thibodeau's over-reliance, particularly on the point guard position, was always a danger, it may be the one thing that, at least from an offensive perspective, is the make or break between this team making the ECF. Is just simply the fact that Jalen Brunson has to be on the floor for this team to be offensively effective. That's a scary pocket to be put in when you also look at what CJ McCollum just did from a defensive perspective for Jalen Brunson. But in order to respond, you have to be able to give him buckets back, and it seems like the Knicks are struggling to figure out how to do that if Brunson doesn't have it going.
Yeah, and the thing is, Jalen Brunson hasn't even been like crazy good at all, like in this series as well. I mean, combined in this game, I mean he has. So I mean, to be fair, in the playoffs, he's averaging 29 points per game, but it's not really that. He's shooting 40 under like sub 40% from the field. Yes, he's doing well from the 3-point line and stuff like that, but it's the sub 40% from the field, which you're gonna notice, like you mentioned, it's just an over reliance on that. And again, is that something on Mike Brown that he's gonna have to change up? Maybe, but them without Jalen Brunson on the court just looks rough, like you mentioned. And if you're gonna be able to do that, you're gonna have to cover for him up on the other side. So it's definitely something to definitely look at. I feel like this is something that if the Hawks saw what they did in Game 2, they're definitely gonna continue to attack that and maybe do that. Whoever offense on Jalen Brunson, try to get him into as much pick and rolls as possible. I mean, that's what we saw what the freaking Pacers did last year, and that's
Mhm.
like was a big part of their offense. So when people start seeing that pattern, they're definitely gonna go to that. And this is like what's like really interesting about a playoff matchup. Once you get into those little chess matches and seeing like what's gonna get you the most efficient opportunities, it's gonna most likely, if you're the Hawks, be involving Jalen Brunson. So yeah, definitely something to be something to look at. The Knicks definitely need one on the road to tie this back up. But
Yeah.
the Hawks, they have a path to victory. And again, like you mentioned, they still haven't had like the full potential of the guys yet. So shout out to them. One more thing I just wanted to mention with Mike Brown talking about bad coaching yesterday. Bro didn't call a timeout with 5 seconds left and didn't advance the ball. Yeah,
Hey, man.
that's definitely I'm definitely going to look at. Next series though, the last series out has gone 2 games. Let's talk about it. I'm not going to be. This is not going to be too much fun. The Cavs 2-0 up on the Toronto Raptors.
Oof.
Yeah,
Oof.
James Harden, Donovan Mitchell, all-time great series so far. Evan Mobley having a phenomenal series so far.
Mm.
Brandon Ingram, on the other hand, has been a big topic of conversation as of late. Not looking the best. Before I go into it, Jay, how do you feel about the series that's gone so far?
Man, it's weird. I think. Okay, TV. Let's not pull the punches. Let's just tell the truth. Cleveland's getting everything. Offensively, they're getting everything they want to. This felt like a series that for the Cleveland Cavaliers, if they want to miss, they want to miss, and if they want to make it, they want to make it. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Especially if you're Harden and Donovan Mitchell. Those two guys have been incredible. Absolutely
Yeah,
incredible.
I mean, that really is the tail of the tape. If I'm keeping it a buck with you, like that really is the tail of the tape. Is just they're getting to everything they really want, and I think the scary part is like TV. This has not been like an efficient 3-point shooting series for them through 2 games, and like that was their bread and butter throughout the regular season, and especially last year as well. Of like being able to berate and bombard teams from beyond the arc. Game 1, 50%. Game 2, 32%. Same result, and arguably a little bit more impressive in game 2, despite the fact that the point disparity doesn't like make it seem that way. In my personal opinion, bro, this is gonna come down to the Raptors trying to find some buckets. Like I don't, it's kind of lame analysis, but it's gonna come down to this team finding some buckets. Brandon Ingram, I'm gonna let you take it. Actually, I want to hear your opinion on this because what he said after the game about the nine shots, the being turned into a screener, things of that nature. TV, I ran the tape back. No, I'm not really
No.
hearing it.
No. Yeah, it was a very, very poor choice of words, especially after the first game of the playoffs for one Brandon Ingram. Yeah, Brandon, you got 6 more shots yesterday. 3 for 15 from the field. And honestly, Jay, I'm gonna be for real with you. That was a very winnable game for the Raptors.
Thank you.
Very winnable. Because it's not I'm not gonna solely blame it on Brandon Ingram. The Raptors did this to themselves too. I mean, the Raptors were freaking top 6 in like least amount of turnovers per game in the NBA this season. 18 and 22 respectively in these 2 games. Nothing.
Right?
It's 22 was a freaking season high. This is like the most turnovers we had in a single game this year. So I'm not gonna just blame it on Brandon Ingram.
Right.
But what I will say is, if we had a normal Brandon Ingram performance, if we had an average Brandon Ingram game performance, this is either like a 1-possession loss or the Raptors somehow pull out the win. Because everyone else came to play.
Yeah.
CMB, I don't want to see Acapulco anymore, y'all. CMB is our guy going forward. We got him playing well. Sandro hitting his shots. Jacoby Walter. Yes, we did not shoot the 3-ball well, and that is one of the big reasons why we cannot compete in this series. But at least Jacoby Walter was hitting some threes. And then Scotty Barnes, his energy is on and off sometimes, but in that second half, he was trying to bring the aggression. Shout out to him.
Mm-hmm.
But Brandon Ingram, it really felt like second half of game 1 onwards, he just has been in his own head, and it's not like he can go on like little stretches or like he just hasn't just been able to get himself going at all. This is reminding me of the freaking DeMar DeRozan days back in the day, and freaking DeMar DeRozan is my favorite player, y'all. This is taking me back to DeMar DeRozan in that 2014 to 2017 period, where he had some of the worst playoff performances for his star, and why people keep calling him DeMar DeFrozen in the playoffs. Jay, this is I think I saw a stat from Raptors Muse that this was the 12th worst field goal percentage game from someone with 10 plus shots in Raptors history.
Goodness gracious.
At least a lot of Raptors playoff history. So there's a couple, I've seen the list, a couple of DeMar DeRozan games, 2 Kyle Lowry games, by the way. Shout out, rough for him. I mean, we got to remember that he's had some rough playoff moments as well. But this series has shown me, and I'll talk about this as a Raptor fan because Donovan Mitchell and James Harden have been absolutely killing us. This team just does not have the offense to compete. We could defend, we could really try to, but it doesn't matter what type of defensive stops we're doing if we can't, one, hold the ball together. We keep turning the ball over. And if Brandon Ingram's not getting it done, we're going to be just ending up losing in these sort of matchups. I mean, it hasn't been like complete blowouts like we've seen on the Celtics side of things or like for the Thunder Phoenix series. But this Raptors team really doesn't have the shooting capabilities. They don't have the one-on-one scoring that the Cavs do. And when we have to focus, and then like our defense, which has been good, to be honest, it hasn't been like a monumental like series for the Cavs either. But they are getting just such great performances from their top 3 guys, and then just getting a little bit here and there. That's honestly just enough for the Raptors because they just don't have the offensive talent, unfortunately. Now, do I think it's going to be a sweep? No, because I feel like there's like, especially after game 2, I feel like there's pathways to victory. But it's going to require, one, Brandon Ingram to really get back into his flow, and 2, just a lot less Jakob Poeltl. We talked about it earlier. Yeah. You even asked me, like, TV, is Jakob Poeltl injured? I'm like, isn't he always? Isn't he always injured? But also, yeah, he just got benched in the last game. So hopefully we see kind of like Darko kind of stick to his guns and kind of like do it that way, because clearly this is like what's going to be working, and hopefully Brandon Ingram just like comes back on for the ride.
Can I ask you like an interesting like Raptors outlook question? I know the series isn't over yet. I'm not necessarily trying to like project forward as if like, oh, this series is done. But one thing that I think is kind of interesting when I look back, particularly at the Jakob Poeltl thing, right? And you hindsight's 2020. So it's one of those things where you have to be careful about how you frame it. But once upon a time at the NBA trade deadline, there was huge conversations around the idea of the Toronto Raptors trying to go get a big that could really provide some kind of offensive firepower. And the name that came up a ton, of course, was Domantas Sabonis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, the names in that trade were tricky. Some were Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett. Some were RJ Barrett, Jakob Poeltl, quite frankly, in this case. Do you feel like, again, hindsight's 2020, but when you look back at that trade deadline, do you kind of wonder whether or not passing on an acquisition like that rears its ugly head in a series like this one? Because I've already seen this in a handful of different series that we've even discussed. For example, with Minnesota, right? Like, I think Minnesota not being able to really get an offensive shot creator outside of Anthony Edwards was part of the reason I was so nervous coming out of game number 1, right? Or how we talked about the Phoenix Suns, and we were talking about them off camera, and the fact that it just feels like Devin Booker as a lead point guard, it just shows you how little shot creation, both for oneself and for the team, they have around him. And that was another team that was heavily rumored to make a team favored trade, right? Like a personnel favored trade at the trade deadline that just didn't pull the trigger. And I look at this series against Cleveland, struggle to rebound. Kind of Domantas Sabonis' thing. Getting offense out of the low post, kind of Domantas Sabonis' thing. The turnovers, Domantas, you can touch and go with that one because his usage is a little big for a player that's like an all-star, but not like, like a fringe, like he's like a fringe all-NBA guy at best. But Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, I've been thinking about this over the course of the first couple of games of like, there's a couple of these teams in the playoffs that did not make that move at the trade deadline, were a little bit more hesitant than I would have expected. And I feel like it's showing up now.
My thing here is, and funnily enough, this does stem from Jakob, especially because he was a trade deadline acquisition a couple years back, returning to the team.
Mm.
Raptor fans know this very well. The Raptors tend to give away first round picks in precarious situations and in situations where they really probably shouldn't have, and maybe either commit to the tank. I mean, if we've seen your Bulls kind of like be in this process in the like in the past too, I feel like we're kind of tied to tied in that way, where they kind of feel like we still want to compete, but we keep trying to like middle out, and that's what they kind of did with the Jakob trade. They gave up a first round pick in the Victor Wembanyama draft, and instead of committing to the tank, they ended up just getting the 13th overall pick and having to get Grady Dick, and we kind of know how that's turning out right now.
Mm-hmm.
So Jakob contract, and the reason why I feel like I'm glad we didn't do this trade at all either is, and we're going to talk about it, and there's going to be definitely some offseason talks because this is legitimately one of the worst contracts in the league. His value to the rest of the NBA goes up as the years and money of his contract go down. Right now, there's 5 more years left on this, and Raptor fans don't like it. No one in the league likes this deal except for Jakob.
Fair.
So, seeing him potentially get traded, you already know if the Raptors had to make a Domantas Sabonis trade like the one that you were mentioning, they were going to have to attach 2 first-round picks. And as much as we want to get off the Jakob contract, that is just not a smart move for a team who thinks that this is going to be the next championship move, because literally it wasn't going to be that, unfortunately. As much as Domantas Sabonis was going to definitely help this team in the now, trading another 2 first-round picks just didn't seem smart at the time. And even though he would have definitely helped right now, I appreciate that we didn't go for it.
Okay.
This is more malpractice in the sense where the Raptors shouldn't have paid this much to him and put him to a long-term deal, because he's clearly breaking down. This man can barely bend over. And I'm glad that Darko was able to have the guts to pull him out and to pull out the $20 million man. But at the end of the day, we're stuck with him. We're stuck with him, and we're going to have to either fade him back in and try to recoup his trade value that way, or just kind of to wind it down and just hope that this is not going to be a crutch for us much going forward. And if we want to end up trading him, it's going to have to be later down the line where his contract becomes easier to take in. But Raptors trading another first-round pick, I'm kind of glad we didn't, just because, yes, again, we would be better, but it would have definitely hindered us long-term again, and we don't need to have more of that.
Okay. That's a good way to look at it. Like I said, at the end of the day, that is more of a long-term outlook. I just think it's kind of interesting because, again, there's a handful of different series, I think, across the board where I think of, like I mentioned 2 already, that I look at it and I ask myself, like, damn, these were 2 teams that were heavily mentioned in the trade market for a particular position. Again, Phoenix for a point guard, for example, perfect example of that idea where you're like, you can see in this series right now that having another connector that can also generate off the bounce, create off the dribble would really be helpful. Having a guy who can be another secondary creator who can help move the ball, maybe be another guy that not only puts pressure on the rim, but, can maybe create advantages for some of these other guys so that maybe Dylan Brooks isn't taking 22 shots with, like, Lord have mercy, maybe 10 of them were like straight isolations, like stuff like that you just don't want to see if you're a Phoenix Suns fan trying to have a realistic chance to win one of these series. Like, I do think about that. So I think that's a good way to look at it. At the end of the day, like you mentioned, as a Bulls fan, there is upside to playing the safe game when it comes to holding your first round picks. Thankfully, we have all of our future first round picks right now. But
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, we kind of just locked ourselves down. I'm not super excited for the outlook of the team because, again, we have this contract, we have the Quickly contract we have to look forward to, and feels like there's not much wiggle room for a team that's literally right up against the luxury tax. So, not looking great. Shout out to the Cavs, though. I know we talked about a lot about the Raptors because, again, resident Raptor fan here. But Evan Mobley playing incredible to start off the series, just showing a lot of force. We've been wanting him to play with a lot of force since his rookie season. He's doing that so far with the Raptors, and he feels real comfortable doing that right now. Harden playing insane, and Donovan Mitchell. Jay, I don't know if you saw this graphic when they brought it up in the last game. Bro is 7th all time in points per game in the playoffs.
Like
an
I
NBA
said before we
history.
started, bro, like at the very beginning of this segment, bro, they're just getting to they're getting to whatever they want, bro. And
Yeah,
Donovan Mitchell is like he is like spearheading that revolt
yeah,
of just like
yeah,
I'm going to go get this, but I am going to
yeah,
make sure that we win this series. Like
yeah,
he's just willing. Him and James Harden are willing it through right now, man,
yeah,
and it's working. It's
yeah,
working.
yeah. But I also just want to shout out. I know he hasn't made the freaking conference finals yet, but in terms of playoff risers, no one is like near better than the lead than Donovan Mitchell. This man actually looks like a near top 5 player in the NBA when it comes playoff time. So shout out to him. He's actually looking like it right now. Jay, let's move on to the next series, and the rest of these series are basically one gamers. The first one I want to talk about is we're gonna talk about the team that you do a podcast on. The Orlando Magic going 1-0 up on the
Yes, sir, Ski.
number one seeded
Yes, sir, Ski.
Detroit Pistons.
Oh man.
Pistons, you can't bully Orlando. That's what I learned from this game.
Yeah.
What do you have to say? I mean, you do a Magic podcast. What do you think like when you end up watching Game One?
Yeah, man. So I think the biggest thing for me, especially because I don't want to over monopolize the subject, because I'm actually more interested to hear what you have to say. My biggest takeaway from Game One, there was three things that really stood out to me. Number one was the fact that this team just responded with the positive energy. This was a team that had a lot going on in the background before. I mean, before the season even ended. I mean, going into that Boston game, it was like looking good. The Boston game happens, where TV says they played the Boston Red Claws, the Maine Red Claws,
The main Red Claws, yeah.
and that game goes how it goes, and you just ask yourself like, yo, what is happening? Then you hear Jamal Mosley rumors. You hear Paulo Banchero, who was the presumed all-star that was going to put in a trade request if Jamal Mosley's not fired after the season is over. You hear those rumblings, right? Then you go into that game against Philly. It's on the road, and you're like, okay, there's two ways you can play this. You can beat Philly handily and bounce back in what would be your rematch series against Boston, or some Magic fans in the comment section, at least for me, speculated, let's play the three-dimensional chess game. And let's go whoop on Charlotte, position ourselves to come out of that Charlotte game and play a more favorable team like the Detroit Pistons. And the only way that I was going to co-sign that even being remotely a possibility was dependent on how they played in game one. And so the fact that they came out, particularly Jalen Suggs, who set the tone personally, in my personal opinion, as
I was
far
gonna
as just
start off with
coming
him.
out. I mean,
I was
just
gonna
shot
start
out of a
off with
cannon,
him.
dude.
I want to start off with him because
Yeah, man. I mean,
yeah,
absolutely shot out of a cannon, dude.
no, we said this when talking about I think when Anthony Black was going on his run like earlier on in the season. As much as people were saying, "Oh, maybe it's time to move off the Suggs because we're near the luxury tax," bro, Suggs is the freaking heart and soul of this team. I don't freaking care. This guy is the energy, and this guy set the tone in
Yeah.
in that first quarter where the Orlando Magic, and it's weird to say this about the Orlando Magic. They scored 35 points in the first quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Freaking this team does not do that very often, and they
Mm-mm.
came out the gate swinging,
Yeah.
absolutely swinging. And the biggest thing I want to talk about in terms of this game is, man, I've seen the Pistons like just wear teams down with their physicality, and then Cade is just that good of an offensive player. I mean, he's a freaking near MVP candidate that he's able to just take him over the top because they're tough defense, and then he's the one like leading the charge.
Yeah.
The Magic have shown shades of what they were working on the last couple of years, bro. The team where they don't get pushed around, the team that can match strength for strength, physical for physical. That's why when in that series versus the Boston Celtics a couple years ago, I had low key hopes for them, even though their offense looked absolutely horrible
Yeah.
at times. It's because they can out physical them and they can make games mucky. That's what the Pistons did to a larger scale throughout the season. That's why they're a freaking 60-win team. But they can't do that with Orlando. And to mix in with that, Jay, this team is healthy for once. This
Oh
team is
man.
healthy.
TV, that was my second point. That was gonna be my second point. Boy, does the team look healthy too. I think that was the main thing for me, bro. The energy was great, but man, to see the main top eight play 20 plus minutes. Oh man, it felt like a revelation, dog. Like it felt like something.
Yeah.
Do you understand that prior to like the last few games, the trio of the actually let's say the full starting five of Franz Wagner, Paulo Banchero, Wendell Carter Jr., Jalen Suggs, and Desmond Bain, they played like a combined 120 something minutes together for the entire season, bro.
Yes. Yeah,
Oh man,
exactly.
dude.
So it could be just timing. It
True.
could be the fact that this team, when they're actually healthy, they actually look pretty damn good.
Mhm.
They might just catch them at the right time. I'm not saying that they're going to beat the Detroit Pistons. I'm not going to bounce on that too early because the Pistons have showed us all year round that they can handle and like have their own counterpunch. So it's going to be super interesting to see how they bounce back. I believe they have a game tonight, right? No, they have a game
No,
tomorrow.
that's
Where
Wednesday.
they're going to be able to bounce back. But this Magic team, all guys in their starting lineup having a minimum 16 points. The fact that Wendell Carter out physical Jalen frickin' Duran. I'm just saying there's a path there.
Yeah.
There's a path, especially if this team is healthy. Now, can they keep this up? It's looking good the last 2 games. It's a whole other beast of trying to do this, trying to win this another 3 times. I'm definitely expecting a whole Pistons comeback, but the Magic have, after especially seeing what they've done these last 2 games, I know what the whole totality of the season says, but they're healthy, and it's just like coming together at the right time. I'm just saying, you never know. And I would keep it just a little bit of a side eye for now to see what the Orlando Magic are doing.
Yeah, I totally agree. That kind of brings me to my third point about this game, and it's where I have like a big asterisk where I'm like, I don't want to overglaze this just yet. Is Jalen Duren only took 4 shots. It felt like JB Bickerstaff didn't really
Oh,
try to
that was
initiate too much offense through him, and the Orlando Magic won the Jalen Duren minutes 60-39. And I just really wonder how real that is.
that worried me because he just looked lost with the ball in his hands. He
Yeah.
wanted to get rid of it real quick.
Very hot potato. Like it seemed like one of those things where even if they wanted to play through Jalen, it didn't seem like he was confident offensively in
Yeah.
himself. I think
Uh,
4 shots is very worrisome for him because we're talking about a guy who, I mean, I made the analogy earlier with Jalen Johnson. We're talking about another guy who might be like, fringe All NBA second team, maybe All NBA third team, going into a contract, off season this summer. Like,
yeah.
it's something to really have to. I mean, as the Detroit Pistons look, I'm not worried that the Pistons are gonna throw Jalen Duren the bag this summer. I
Yeah.
don't think that anything that happens in this series is gonna change whether or not the Detroit Pistons throw the bag at Jalen Duren. What I'm saying is, for a player of this caliber that has been this good all year long, finished top 3 in most improved player, by the way, this was worrisome for me because it felt like we saw more of the Jalen Duren from last year that made Detroit so apprehensive to give him that extension right away, where it seemed like the defensive instincts struggling. He got beat on backdoor cuts 3 times. One of them was a light pass alley-oop over the top of him to Wendell Carter Jr. from Paulo Banchero. 2 other ones was a Jamal Cain like slick dive from the baseline to the basket, slick dive, boom, gets it, easy layup. Same thing happened on a different action, same side of the floor from Anthony Black on that left-hand side. Happened 3 different occasions where it just felt like, and that's just the Paulo Banchero assist, where it felt like there were 3 occasions where like he just got caught napping. And this is one of the best TV. This team was top 3 in rim protection this season. That was not all just Isaiah Stewart, dog. That was not all Isaiah Stewart, and that was not all Ausar Thompson.
Yeah. And they got
Jalen Duren has
outscored by
something to do.
20 in game 1. Outscored 20 points in the paint.
That's that's ridiculous, and that's the part where, as somebody that covers the Magic, if I'm looking at it from an objective standpoint, that's the part where I put the big asterisk star next to and say, there's no way that happens again in game 2. Now, if it does, the Pistons have way bigger questions to answer now.
Yes, no, for sure. That's why I don't want. It's weird with game 1s, right? And this is why we're overreacting. And this is like, how much do you really want to buy into this? Because we've seen some aberrations. We've seen, again, this is the biggest one that people are talking about this past weekend.
Right.
But is this going to be something that continues? Is this going to be a trend, or is this something where it's like, okay, this is more of an aberration from this series more than what's actually going to happen? That's why I'm keeping an eye out really on him and on game 2, because the Pistons really need to bounce back. Because what we saw in game 1 was that Cade Cunningham is fine. He's completely fine.
Yeah.
But Tobias Harris going 17 points on 15 shots, 5 for 15. Jalen Duren only attempting 4 shots. The offense outside of him was non-existent, and that just can't happen.
Yeah.
So I'm 100% keeping an eye on the rest of those guys because I'm completely comfortable with Cade. But if I'm doing Orlando Magic, this has, again, just opened the door a little bit more open than we had beforehand.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is one of the more intriguing series to me because of the mere fact that now we saw the Magic punch first. That's a very telling part of all of this. The Magic striking first is what makes this a series. Because TV, we thought this was going to be at least a 5-gamer. We said it.
Yeah.
We thought we said regardless of who ends up coming in out of that playing game, we thought it was going to be at least a 5-gamer. But I think the fact that the Magic punched first does tell a lot more about how this series could be a little bit more interesting than we gave it credence before the series started. So I'm interested to see how that whole thing banks out moving forward. Because if the Magic, I'm under the belief that if the Magic win game 2 and go back to the Kia Center up 2-0, I think a lot of people are going to start hedging their bets on the idea of still thinking that Detroit can win this series. Game 2 is way more important than maybe a lot of people are giving it credit. And there are some people that are maybe even overglazing Game 2 to a certain extent. I'm probably leaning more towards the latter than the former because I really think Game 2 might just mean that much.
Yeah, no, 100%. It was just, again, it was just a weird watch. It just was something super weird because take away the names, take away whoever. Just watching that game in general, you would not think this is a 1-8 series when you see them compete. So the fact that the Magic were able to bring it, again, they have some momentum now. So let's see if they're able to build off of that. Next few series that we're going to talk about, we're going to go over back to the West. Spurs taking on the Blazers. And bro, the talks coming out of this was obviously the Victor Wembanyama playoff debut. 35 points, 5 rebounds. And we got full alien mode from Victor Wembanyama. The drifting threes, the contested shots, the getting to the paint however he wants. We got the full Victor Wembanyama performance, and clearly the Trailblazers do not have the offense to compete with the Spurs. Your thoughts on the first game?
So I think if you remember when we went into Game 1, I told you my biggest thing wasn't even about whether or not this was like a series where the Spurs just whoop on Portland and so on and so forth. I just want to see how Victor would play. And more particularly, I wanted to see how aggressive Victor would be.
Ooh, this boy hates everyone he faces. He plays with some vigor against everyone.
Well, look, if you had any worries about first playoff game jitters, brother, you worried for no reason. TV, 5 of 6 from beyond the arc was what got me, son. I ain't gonna lie to you.
That's when I know bro, he's in a full different alien type of mode we got from him. We got full alien.
That's when I know he's in a different type of duffel bag, bro. 35 points in 32 minutes, 21 shots. Next closest behind him was De'Aaron Fox with 15. Was not afraid to take the 3 ball. Didn't even get to the free throw line as much as I would have really liked for him. Somehow finished this game at only a +4 in the game. Felt like he was just way more impactful than that overall. But you know what, man? At the end of the day, this is the interesting spot about the Spurs is they need a series like this. And the reason why I say that is because TV, the road to the Western Conference Finals for the Spurs is rough. It's rough. Once they get past the Blazers, I think regardless of who comes out,
yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I'm glad to see Vic really really showing off, because I think he's gonna need every ounce of confidence he can get moving forward. This guy's coming off a win in DPOY. That was already announced as of the recording of this. The offense is there. The defense is there. This team is constructed in a way that it feels like, and again, it's hard to, we're overreacting here, but they feel ready. Let's put it that way. They feel like a team that is ready regardless of what the collective age of this team is. And I felt like in game 2, 2 young teams, a lot of questions, and I felt like the Spurs just came out and handled business as they should. And I think they did. I think that's going to be huge for them moving forward.
Yeah. I'm there with you. I feel like this is the perfect first round matchup, but for a different reason. I feel like the Spurs will do enough in this game. Speaking of the Blazers, They came into the series, and sorry, they came into the playoffs out of all of 16 teams in the playoffs with the worst offensive efficiency, 113 points per 100 possessions, and
Yeah.
also the worst 3-point shooting clip at 34% from three on the season. So clearly, when watching this game, outside of Denny Avdia and maybe a little bit from Drew Holiday and stuff, this team just doesn't have the offense to compete
Mm.
at all. Shane Sharp, 10 points off the bench. They just didn't get enough bench production as well. The offense is what's going to kill them. But why I say this is the perfect first round matchup for the San Antonio Spurs as a way to test them is, bro, this team just does not freaking stop defensively.
Mm.
This Trailblazers team has bodies. They can throw at these guys. Yes, Victor Wembanyama had a great game, but they are a good defensive team. And to be honest, for the most part, I didn't mind the way that they guarded the guard, like especially the guard play of the San Antonio Spurs, where they were daring them to shoot, kind of try to run the offense this way. But the Spurs are like, yeah, no, we don't have to keep doing that. We have a freaking alien at 7'5", and no matter what you do, we're gonna get him the ball. And that's what ended up happening in game one. But this team is really tough defensively. I don't think there's when I watch a series like after game one, I'm thinking of it and thinking I came out of it thinking this Blazer team is not gonna is not gonna get like blown out. We've seen what happened to the Suns. We've seen what happened to the 76ers. I don't think that's gonna happen to the Blazers. I think it's always gonna be losses within like the 8-14 range, where they're kind of like there, but their offense is just not good enough to bring them over the top. The Spurs will win this handily. I think their defense will be fine, especially against a subpar offense. But this Blazer team, even near the end, I still think they were competing pretty well. So shout out to them for competing, but clearly this team is not on the level of the San Antonio Spurs, and I don't think they're going to be able to find the offense outside of Denny Avdia to really compete. Shout out to Vic though; he made staying up that night very much enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think it's going to be an exciting series to watch from a basketball display standpoint, but I feel like there's a reason why there was so high confidence in the Spurs coming into the series. Besides, of course, the fact that it's a 2-7. And I think game one kind of stamped it for me. Could we
Yeah,
begin to get a bit ahead of ourselves? Potentially. That's what this episode's all about, right? At the
yeah,
same time. But I think that this is one of those, again, I feel like for a younger team in San Antonio, I felt like they still came out and just, for the most part, I think just kind of played like they've been there before. And I think Vic in particularly, I think if that's the kind of debut you get from Vic, it really sets the bar high for how dangerous this team can be. And I think when you go back to, excuse me, when you're talking about the defensive versatility of Portland, switchability, the guard rotations, the wing guys, it does give you, as you mentioned beforehand, that interesting glimpse. Not a great one for one, but an interesting
100%.
glimpse defensively of like what you might see with OKC or what you would see with like a Minnesota, right?
Right,
Like
right,
it
right.
does give you like that scout team. I hate to call the Portland Trailblazers that to the extent, right?
Yeah,
Because that sounds disrespectful, but it does give you that vision of like, okay, elite jumbo ball handler similar to Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. You get it in Deni Avdija. You've got a legit ball move. You got like legit ball handlers around the perimeter. Yes, they're not as offensively gifted as a AJ Mitchell, as a Jalen Williams, right?
yeah,
As some of these, as Cason Wallace, some of these other guys. But
yeah,
it does give you the simulation with guys like Scoot Henderson and Shaden Sharp, right? You do get like I think that is a better word instead of scout team. It's like a
yeah.
simulation, so to speak, of
An
what
offensively challenged version.
yes, of like an offensively challenged simulation of what you can see
Yeah.
from an Oklahoma City, what you could potentially see from a to a lesser degree
Minnesota.
Minnesota Timberwolves team as well, right? So I think that's how I think that is an interesting vision of like how the draw works in more than one way. I
Yeah,
do
no,
think that's a pretty
100%.
interesting way to look at it.
Yeah. But bro, if this is what we're getting from the beginning of Victor Wembanyama, if this is what we only saw from game one, oh, the sky's the limit for this dude. The sky's the absolute limit. I cannot wait to see it. Hopefully, we get more Wemby ball as the playoffs progress. These last three series, I don't know how much we're gonna talk about them, but there's definitely some interesting talking points. We're gonna start over here. Lakers Rockets. One of the strangest game ones, I
Dude.
would say. One of the strangest game ones because prior to the game, freaking Kevin Durant just goes out. He just goes out randomly before the game. And bro, I've been wanting to to talk about this with you on the pod for a minute. One of the craziest stats I've ever seen. I have to bring it back up because watching this game probably wasn't one of the best watches to watch during the weekend. But the Rockets lost the game by 9, mind you. Had 27 more shot attempts than the Los Angeles Lakers.
That's insane. That's insane,
27!
bro. That's crazy. That's actually like kind of nuts. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, what even is that?
That is one of the craziest things I've ever seen. They had 18 more offensive rebounds, and you lost by 9.
Yeah.
Bro, this team just cannot. It was hard to watch. They didn't even get Şengün in the post. They were like, work at the top of the key and try to do something. Even though they had no shooters around them, this team can't shoot for a lick without Kevin Durant. Poor freaking Reed Shepard had to put up 14 3-pointers. Jeez, man. This guy had to put up basically every single 3-pointer possible. Amin Thompson freaking doesn't look like he shot a basketball before when I saw that one 3-pointer he attempted. And they did, and what should have been a series that was the Rockets to lose, freaking LeBron James dimes them up for 13 assists, and Luke Kennard comes in with a 27-point performance.
Dude.
I'm not saying that this is like one of the reasons why I decided to go like, Rockets to 6 and why I thought this was going to be competitive, but I will say this. The Rockets have been the most confusing team to me all year. And that confusion kind of bled into the playoffs. Kevin Durant is still questionable for the next game. Bro, I don't know what this offense is going to look like in the next one. I don't know what change they can make because, bro, if you can't win it, if you can't win it with that amount of attempts, that amount of opportunities, I don't know what we could do with you.
Man, shout out to LeBron though, man. The 10 assists in the first half. What the heck? 10 assists in the first half is nuts. Don't get me wrong, everything calmed down in the second half as far as that was concerned, but he just didn't need to. He quite frankly didn't need to. He was a swing guy. He played a role that I think, if you add Luka Doncic, if you add Austin Reeves into it, I think this game would have been even more ugly just given the fact that Braun just stepped up in a way where it's scary that he didn't have like the stat line that screams best player on the floor, but just simply was. And TV, let's go back to a quote that was from Kevin Durant only a couple of months ago where he said, "It feels like this team can't win unless I drop 30. Well, what happens when you don't play? What happens when you don't play? Well,
this is what happened. This is what happens when you don't play.
The offense is non-existent when he doesn't play. That's what's really scary about this whole thing, right? And what's weird? I read an article like recently that like brought up 2023's free agency class because that's the free agency class in which they signed Fred VanVleet. He plays for the one season and then of course he's been injured all of this season due to the ACL. And if you remember, there's another in particular player who was brought up very heavily at the time that would be a really interesting fit right now. And he's in the playoffs. James Harden. And it makes me wonder, man. Again, I told you, I was in this framework a lot throughout the game ones where I was like, wow, there's a lot of teams in this postseason that are probably having some really tough revisionist history right now. And Houston really feels like that team, bro. Because, TV, how long? And don't get me wrong, the jumbo everybody 6'10 lineup was dope for game one against OKC. Dope. And of course you lose Steven Adams, right? You don't have Fred VanVleet. You lose Steven Adams.
Those are massive, bro. Those guys are massive to that team.
Huge losses, of course. And you have to credit that. But how long did we say all season, bro? Just even go get Spencer Dinwiddie off the scrap heap, but like go get a point guard.
Someone needs to create. Bro, I'm trying to
think about the names that came up, TV. Kobe White came up at the trade deadline. John Morant came up at the trade deadline. Spencer Dinwiddie was like a sign off the street because I think he was playing in like Israel or something at the time.
Yeah.
Like, there were names that, look, and I don't even know if I don't think this would change the series, but I remember Chris Paul's name came up. I'm not saying that it would change the dynamic of the series, but what I'm saying is I mean, they don't feel like they even have a puncher's chance right now without KD helping to initiate offense. And that has a lot to do with the fact that they don't have a table setter. They
Yeah.
just don't. They just don't. And it's that blatant. TV, that stat that you just shared, basically 20 more shots than the Lakers.
Almost 30, bro. Almost 30.
I mean, it goes to show you that it almost shows you how fast they're playing because they don't have anybody to set the table. You know what I'm saying? Like, it almost seems like they're pushing the pace because they don't have anybody to quite literally slow them down. You can see it in the shot attempts. And I think that's the part that's the scariest, is because even if KD comes back, who changes that? Who changes that? And I don't think I don't think that play style is going to be conducive to being able to win. And that brings us to an even scarier point. Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves are not coming back in this series. Every indication has sent the message that they're not coming back in this series unless it goes deep. Like, this is going to go 6, maybe 7 games, and then there's a perception. But TV, if they get out of this, the Lakers get out of this series, and then they get Luka back, and then they get Austin back, we might have to say, watch out. That quick.
Bro, I guess you could say that. I don't want to give Laker fans false hope. But
True.
at the end of the day, this Rockets team is just one of the most confusing teams in the league. Bro, before we move on to the next series, I want to just drop some these other stats because they forced 20 turnovers on the Los Angeles Lakers. 18 of them they convert into fast break points. Take away the second chance points that they got. They were outscoring this game 100-75. Take away the fast break points of both of these teams. They were outscored 96-64.
Jesus, man. That is
They cannot score unless it's through chaos.
Oh my
There's
Lord.
no half-court offense at all. They don't even want to freaking put Chingun in the post, bro. It annoys me when they start him off at the top of the key. This man is not Jokic. I'm sorry, he's just not Jokic. You can't just go up there and try and create something. And then you expect him to be that assist guy if you don't have guys that he could pass it out to? Come on, bro. This Rockets team is one of the most confusing builds in my opinion. And without KD, like we mentioned off the top, the offense is just conducive to this. They can't score anything unless it's again, it's something through their creative chaos, or they just have to get something on the fast break. This is apparently the lowest effective field goal percentage in the last 23 playoff games, not even including Houston Rockets games, dating back to last playoffs.
Yeah.
So, insane. This offense is just hard to watch. This offense is just completely hard to watch. Hopefully they bounce back in game 2, and if they lose game 2, oh boy, there's going to be some uncomfortable discussions. There's going to be some real uncomfortable discussions. So, yeah, the Lakers take game 1. The Rockets need to really bounce back, and they have to bounce back quick. And obviously they need KD back. That is also going to be very, very big. Jay, for these last 2 series, we could skim through these. Thunder Suns. Yeah, the Thunder are in playoff mode, and it's scary for all teams involved. 119-84. Just again, some key stats from this game. The Suns, 19 turnovers. 19 turnovers in this game. The OKC Thunder outscored them in the paint 52-24, 18-2 on the fast break, 34 points off turnovers compared to the 2 points off turnovers for the Suns. This was a pure beating from top to bottom. Do the Suns have any sort of semblance of a chance?
No, I hate to say it, but
Yeah.
I think the best way to put it is the way we discuss it off camera is the way I still feel about it, even after I had some of these other conversations about some of the series we discussed, which is like, if I'm just being all the way real, this team just watched Dylan Brooks take 22 shots to lead the team in shot attempts. This team watched a game where, quite frankly, OKC was not afraid to shade and hedge towards Devin Booker as much as humanly possible to force the ball out of his hands, and nobody else could seem to really create for themselves in an efficient manner or
At all.
create for anyone else. TV, I talked about this before we got on. No one had more than 3 assists in this game for the Phoenix Suns. In a game where it felt like with the way they were playing Devin straight on with like blatantly saying, look, we're not worried about y'all. We just need to get this guy to give the ball up. It felt like there should have been so much more ball movement to exploit that tactic, and there just wasn't. And let's also talk about the fact that if you look at Dylan Brooks' shot chart, how much of it really came at the rim?
3 for 12 of shots outside of the restricted area.
There you go. 12 shots outside of the restricted area. Very inefficient in that space. And more importantly, I'll go back to a quote KD said on the podcast with LeBron James and Steve Nash. There's only certain guys you want shooting mid-range jumpers, TV. And I don't think Dylan Brooks is one of them, brother. I'm going to be honest with you. Then I think that got proven in game 1, bro. Like, if
Yeah.
you're going to have to settle with a bunch of Dylan Brooks mid-range jumpers, I don't think you're beating the Oklahoma City Thunder, bro. And to make things worse, Mark Williams makes the Lakers look like geniuses because right when the avatar was needed, he vanished. Now they have no inside presence outside of Oso Ighodaro, who has been good this season, but let's be honest, against Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein and Jalen Williams, I don't think that's going to work out very well. Which is why I think at one point, I think we saw a 7-minute stretch where we didn't see a single center on the floor for the Phoenix Suns.
They need to try anything, bro. They need to try anything. They put in poor Kamon Malawatch in there, and shout out to him. He's a lottery pick. Probably he could be a really good defender in years to come. Bro got thrown into the fire. This guy's a freaking project player. Got thrown into the fire, and against Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein, did not have a great time.
Oh my lord.
Yeah, no. This Suns team, like you mentioned, hedging on Devin Booker because they don't trust anyone else on that roster. But I will say this. And we're probably going to talk a lot more about the Thunder throughout these playoffs because they're going to be here for a long time. Mm-hmm. But we see what playoff Thunder looks like. Flying around the floor, being able to switch on everyone, being able to hit these jumpers, can get these fast break opportunities, just completely overwhelm teams. We saw what they did last year, and they were able to bring it over to this year. The playoff Thunder is a real thing, and we saw it immediately in game 1. Once playoff basketball is on, not only are they're trying to beat you, they're trying to send a real message, and the Suns got that real quick.
Yeah. I think that this is one of those where OKC kind of like, again, the let me make an example of you game. And scary, by the way, not even a really good Shai Gilgeous-Alexander game, got to the free throw line a bajillion times in the process. And Dylan Brooks says going into Wednesday's game against OKC, he says he wants the ISO assignment against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Bro's gonna foul out in the first half.
Bro had 4 fouls in the first game. So if he wants the ISO assignment versus Shai, I'm getting those first 2 picked off early.
Yeah.
He's fouling out of this game. It's going to be an absolute joke if he does. He's going to be memed forever by coming out and saying that if he messes around and fouls out. And I think that he might have just put an insane target on his back. TV, can I throw out a little bit of an interesting sportsbook fact to you really quick? As of the recording of this episode, the Oklahoma City Thunder are favored by 17.5 going into game 2.
Yeah.
For context, the day that we're recording this is the Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers are actively playing, ironically, as we're recording this. The Boston Celtics, with no Joel Embiid on the other side of the floor, are only favored by 13.5 at home. Goes to show you how insanely dominant it looks like this OKC Thunder team is.
Yeah. Insane performance. Again, one of the biggest things I said going into the series of what's going to, I'm not even really thinking of the Phoenix Suns, is if they can get Jalen Williams going. And so far after game 1, he looks like he's getting back to his usual stuff, which is great. Chet Holmgren had a great game. And what's scary, again, for future teams going into this, each of their role players had their pockets in the game.
Yeah.
And two freaking back-to-back threes from AJ Mitchell. Jared McCain hit a three-pointer as well. Like, all of these guys can have their moments against you and could really turn the game around. So that's something to note well for the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're looking really good. The Suns, again, have no chance. And last but not least, speaking of the 76ers, Celtics absolutely mollywopped them in game one. Biggest thing here, no Joel Embiid, no dynamic offense. Celtics can read them like a book, and they absolutely destroyed them. Jay, your thoughts?
I like that Jason Tatum looked like himself in game one. I think that was a great way to kind of get your feet back wet in the playoff setting. I think
Is
that
he
was a
gonna be
very
a double
important.
double machine from now on? Like, bro has been like averaging a triple double ever since he got back.
I think there's some. I look, man. I think there is some upside to having to be on the sideline sometimes, where you're, especially if you're an isolation guy like Jason Tatum can be. I think having to see things from a different perspective sometimes can be a very scary eye opener, the third eye, so to speak,
Yeah,
for Jason Tatum. Of you know what you're capable of doing physically. You know what this team is capable of from a roster perspective. Now where is it that you can change your game next? I think it took something like sitting down for nearly a year to see that he has the facilitating upside to be someone who can really take this offense to another level as a play initiator without him having to be the guy that has to be take the final shot. This is a guy who I think can be just as much of a point forward as some of these other high talented guys that we talk about when we point to dudes like Apollo Banchero, for example, or Cade Cunningham, those jumbo wings that also have that high upside as floor spacers let's say facilitators. I won't say floor spacers just because both of them do struggle to shoot the three in comparison to Jason. But as facilitators at the wing spot, I think Jason Tatum has the upside to be in that conversation with guys like those. He isn't brought up like that because he's much better of an isolation scorer than those
yeah.
two. But I think that he can be just as good, maybe not better, but just as good of a passer in those same kind of scenarios. And I think it took a year or near a year of having to sit back on the sideline and kind of see things from a different perspective to open that third eye of like, oh, this is the next step in my
Hmm.
game. And I think that it's like you said, it's showing. It's showing.
Yeah, no, 100%. He's looking more and more like himself again, adding other elements to the game. Jaylen Brown, rough first half, but he was able to bounce back. And then poor Philly. The only time I felt like they even had like a miniature run, which was in that third quarter, they like turned the ball over twice, and then the Celtics got back up to 20 plus. And yeah, their offense is just not good enough. Just not good enough, especially without Joel Embiid. It becomes way too predictable. It's just Tyrese Maxey or bust at this point.
True.
And once the Celtics know that, they can easily take that away, and then the 76ers just don't have the defensive firepower to handle all the different Boston Celtics players that really had some good performances. I mean, 26 from Jalen, 25 from Jason, four other guys in double figures. Shout out to the 76ers, though. They're competing right now. But this feels like a sweep still, right?
I mean, like I said, I think before the series even started, I said the only way they get a game off is if somewhere, somehow, Joel Embiid somehow pops in this series. It doesn't look like we're on track to see that. I don't want to let where the score is early in the first quarter as we're kind of like keeping track of this game
Yeah.
while recording. So
Yeah.
like my opinion on it. But I feel like this is a series that the Celtics need to really put their foot down on. And I think when you factor in Jason Tatum's injury, when you factor in some of the late season injury stuff with Jaylen Brown and stuff as well, this is one of those series that if you're Boston's very well known for kind of like playing with their food sometimes.
Hmm.
In these early round series, this is one of those where they need to get out of here. Like they need to get out of here and quick. Like this needs to be a four gamer really for them.
100%. But yeah, they're looking like they're taking care of business, looking like how they're supposed to. Let's see if Philly can even keep any of these games close. Who knows? I mean, they're down by 2 right now in the first quarter. Who knows what happens this game? But it does look like the Celtics will be able to take care of business. But yeah, those are all the series. Let us know down below what you guys think of all of them. Before we sign out, Jay, quick question. Before looking at all these series that you had here, is there one person or one team you worried about more than most? Before we head out, is there anything that you see here that you're kind of like most worried about, and maybe like thinking of your predictions too, that maybe might sway your like the way you think the series is gonna go?
So, as far as most worried as in relation to predictions, I would say the Jalen Duren thing really kind of concerns me as someone who did pick Orlando to lose in five, coming into the series. I see that dynamic being very different if Jalen Duren is not the guy that he was during the regular season. As far as just individual worried about, I don't know who I'm more worried about specifically from a defensive perspective. Am I worried about Jalen Brunson versus CJ McCollum, or am I now more worried about Dylan Brooks on an island against Shea Gilgeous-Alexander? Because I mean, both sound bad, but Dylan is asking for it, which makes it a little worse. So I guess those
Fair
are
enough.
the ones.
Yeah, I feel you. I feel you. My main one was gonna be Jalen Duren as well. It's just mostly because he just didn't even want to look at the rim in game one, which is again very strange, very out of character for Jalen Duren, who had again a near All NBA level season. So
Yeah.
him bouncing back in game two is something I think everyone's keeping their eye on, including myself. So hopefully he is able to bounce back there. But besides that, I gotta go with my guy Brandon Ingram. I mean, he's wanting to have more of the responsibility. He's the guy who's gonna if the Raptors want any chance, he's gonna have to have a much better game offensively. And if it's more of the same than what we saw in game two, it's not going to be great. But hopefully, if he starts home cooking back in Toronto, that would be great. But the Raptors' offense is not going to compete at all with the Cleveland Cavaliers if Brandon Ingram does not get it going.
Yeah. Bi put up or shut up time, bro. Put up or shut up
Yeah,
time. Through two games, a lot of question marks, a lot more yapping than real productivity. Darko said earlier today, he mentioned the idea that Bi didn't get to the free throw line at all. I that's something I think they should put a lot of emphasis on. Bi not getting to the free throw line, I think, is a very strong indication of his aggressiveness offensively. Personally, he's kind of like KD, where like you're not gonna get to the line a ton, but like
yeah,
you just deserve. You do your game, the isolation game that you play, just deserves that whistle to a lesser degree. So to have no free throw attempts really throughout this series to kick things off, because it's practically non-existent.
hmm
That is a little worrisome to me. I think game three, he got to come out swinging. He got to come out on Jalen Suggs crack baby level Tommy. He got to be out there ready to make it happen
yeah.
offensively.
No, he needs to get a right off jump if the Raptors again to kind of like let the rest of the team know that they still got a chance to compete here, but he needs to be the one like leading the offense 100%. Keep that energy all night long. The Raptors can provide that second half energy throughout all of the game. I think they have a chance, but they're gonna need to do it, and I haven't been able to see the first two games, so it's definitely something to look out for.
Facts.
But yeah, that is all of our playoff thoughts so far. Let us know down below. Do you agree or disagree? Any other things that we didn't mention that we should have looked out for? Let us know down below. But yeah, Jay, another end of another fantastic episode. Thank you guys for watching. What do you have to tell these beautiful people before we sign out?
Hey man, locked into the playoffs. Look, some of the X's and O's we're gonna get into as we get further and further along these series. Overreaction game ones are always the most fun because it's just kind of pointing out the little nitpicky stuff that kind of stands out from the opening portion of the series. So as we go along, it'll be even more in depth as we kind of break these things down. So stay tuned for that. The recap, some other interesting like news related stuff. I'm sure me and TV will probably try to start having a couple of conversations about some of you guys' teams that aren't in the playoffs right now as well. So definitely stay tuned for some of that stuff. That'll probably be some more like TikTok related stuff. While we try to stay locked in on the playoffs, of course. But yeah, man. I mean, we're here now. Look, we've been hyping it up for weeks that like, oh man, once playoff basketball starts, we're gonna ramp up into new form. I feel reformed, bro. We are in a good spot, and I feel like we've gotten a couple of really, really good games to kick things off.
100%. And I'm super excited to talk more about that. And we're going to have another episode coming to you again next week when we talk about more of this playoff basketball. Who knows? Maybe some series might even be done at that point. So make sure you lock into that. And if you want to hear, again, hear our day-to-day thoughts. Check out the daily content pages, man. TikTok and Instagram, YouTube Shorts. You're gonna find all of our post game recaps and all that. So if you want to be seeing how we think of the games as the games go on, that's where you want to check us out as well. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Again, make sure you check out all of our social networks, YouTube, Apple Podcast, Spotify, all that stuff. You can't avoid us. You're going to be able to see us everywhere, so make sure you tap into all of those places if you want to hear our thoughts, especially throughout playoff basketball. But yeah, today's the end of today's episode. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you all have a fantastic day. This is TV. This is Jay. We're signing out. Peace.